Hi, Bobby here. In this lesson, we're going to look at what I think is quite a revolutionary way to view the 3-note per string system. Now, there are hundreds of lessons on the 3-note per string system. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to whiz through the positions anyway. We're going to be working with the parent scale of C major. So the 3-note per string system, as you may know, contains 7 positions that are repeated all over the fretboard. There are many different ways to visualize harmony on the fretboard. There's obviously the 3-note per string system, there's the cage system, there's the intervallic formula-based approach, which is something that I'm very, very fond of and something that I will do a lesson on somewhere down the line. But if you play any legato or fast alternate picking lines, then the 3-note per string system is extremely useful. I'm going to include a link where you can download fretboard diagrams, the tab for the solo I played at the start, which is actually in using the parent scale of C major. In that case, it was D Dorian. It will also include backing track on there as well. And it would really help the channel if you like and subscribe, obviously. Just get that out of the way first of all. But let's look at the C major scale 3-note per string system. As I say, I'm gonna whiz through it. I'm not gonna break it all down kind of fret by fret. I'm gonna start on the lowest fretted position. So I'm gonna start on the note of F. I'm not gonna call these position 1, position 2, blah 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 blah, or give them any kind of fancy names, you know. But first of all, we've got next position. Next position. Next. Next. And then it just repeats. Obviously, you get octave repeats. Now, that is the C major scale all over the fretboard. So that would be C Ionian. It will also be D Dorian. It will also be E Phrygian. It will be F Lydian. It will be G Mixolydian. It will be A Aeolian, and it will be B Locrian or B Locrian, depending on how you pronounce it. So, you know, think of it as the parent scale that represents all 7 of the modes of the major scale. Now, you may notice when you're learning 3-note per string shapes that you've only got 3 different finger patterns. So if we take this this second shape, I mean we could call this G Mixolydian. We have this shape, this finger pattern, where you've got a 1 fret space between each finger. We've got it on the next string. We've got it on the next string. And you find that you have them all over the fretboard. You see repetition of that particular finger pattern. You also have this finger pattern as well, which you see repetition of all over the fretboard. So that would have a 1 fret space between the second and the 4th finger. And the third and final pattern that you encounter would be, which you get all over the fretboard, and that would have a 1 fret gap between the 1st and 3rd finger, or 1st and 2nd, depending on the fingering. I mean, we're not going to get hung up on the fingering. Sometimes I use 1, 2, 3. Sometimes I use 1, 3, and 4 for that particular fingering. So what you can do is you can attribute colours to these 3 patterns, and you find that they run in sequence. So if we take this shape, if we call this, for argument's sake, I mean, you can attribute any colour you like. That's a Pink Floyd reference, unintentional Pink Floyd reference. You can attribute any colour you like to these shapes. So for argument's sake, if we just call this one red, you will find that you will get 3 occurrences of a red pattern. If we move on to the next pattern, well, let's call that blue. And we're talking about the physical pattern, not the notes or the intervals. Now, blue, you will always have 2 blue patterns together. And then finally, we go on to the next string. So that's the one where you've got a 1 fret gap between the first and third finger, or first and second finger, whichever you use. So if we look at that shape in terms of colours, we can call that red, 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 because you're going to get 3 reds in succession. Blue, blue, because you're going to get 2 blues in succession. And then we'll call this one green. Now, if we had an extra string on the guitar, we would have 2 green patterns before moving on, before it would repeat. If we had an infinite number of strings on the guitar, the sequence would always go red, 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 blue, blue, green, green, red, 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 blue, blue, green, green. Obviously, we don't have an infinite number of strings, but the really cool thing about this is if we're finishing with a green pattern in this position, so we're going red, 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 blue, blue, green. When we move on to the next position, we're starting with a green pattern again. So we're going green, green. So we've got 2 green, and then we know we've got red next, and we know that when we have a red, when we encounter a red shape, we've got 3 of them. So we can go green, green, red, red, red. Well, what's next? Blue. And if we had an extra string, it would be blue again. But we move on to the next position, and we start with blue. So we know that we've got 2 blues, and then we move on to green. We know that when we encounter a green shape, we're going to have 2. So blue, blue, green, green, and then red, red. And again, if we had an extra string, we'd have another red shape. So we have 3 red. So this, we can call the shape blue, blue, green, green, red, red. We move on to the next position. Well, that starts with a red shape. 2 red shapes. If we had a low B string, it would be 3 red shapes. But so 2 red shapes. 2 blue, 2 green. And then our next shape starts with green. And then we've got 3 red, and then 2 blue. And we move on to the next position. We start with blue. And then we've got 2 green, and then 3 red. When you encounter your first occurrence of a red shape, just know that you're going to have 3 of them unless you run out of strings. When you encounter your first occurrence of a blue shape, know that you've got 2 of them unless you run out of strings. And when you encounter your first occurrence of a green shape, know that you've got 2 of those unless you run out of strings. So just to recap this position, we're going to have blue. That's actually our second occurrence of blue because we don't have a low B string. And then we go to green, green, and now red. So we know we've got 3 red, we've got 3 strings left. And we move up to this final position, and we start with a red shape, and then we've got blue. So we know we've got 2 blue, so we've got 2 green next. So there must be a red shape next. And lo and behold, there is. And it continues up the fretboard that way. Now, that's something that I discovered years after I learnt the positions and memorized the positions. But if you're going into this, and you know, it's quite a big undertaking, practicing and learning and cataloguing all 7 positions of the 3-note per string system in all 12 keys, you know, and attributing each one to a different mode if you work that way. But this can really, really help you along the way if you assign a color to each physical shape. So just in summary, you have 3 different physical shapes. Call them what you want, but we're calling this one red. You're going to have 3 red in succession. Then you're going to have 2 blue. So 2 occurrences of this physical shape. And then you're going to have 2 green. So obviously if we had an extra string, red, 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 blue, blue, green, imaginary extra string, green. So there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. The solo I played at the start, I will download a link to a transcription of that solo, the Guitar Pro 8 files, fretboard diagrams kind of pertaining to this 3-color system, you know, all of the 3-note per string shapes in the parent scale of C major, and a backing track. But that solo might be a good one to look into because I'm working exclusively with the parent scale of C major. So it's D Dorian, you know, it's just over a kind of static D drone, but I'm not adding any extra notes from any other scales. Incidentally, I know that wasn't a blues solo, but if you're looking for an online blues guitar course, then please check out my website, absolutebluesguitar.com, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.